chapter 7, text 21, Bhagavad Gita. Yo yo yam yam tanum bhakta shraddharchitam ichhati tasya tasya chalam shraddham tam eva vada dhami aham. Translation. I am in the heart, I'm in everyone's heart as a super soul. As soon as one desires to worship some demigod, I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to that particular deity. Purport. God has given independence to everyone. Therefore, it is if a person desires to have material enjoyment and wants very sincerely to have such facilities from the material demigods, the Supreme Lord as Super Soul in everyone's heart understands and gives facilities to such persons. As the Supreme Father of all living entities, he does not interfere with their independence, but gives all facilities to that so that they can fulfill their material desires. Some may ask why the all-powerful God gives facilities to the living entities for enjoying this material world, and so lets them fall into the trap of illusory energy. The answer is that if the Supreme Lord as Super Soul does not give such facilities, then there is no meaning to independence. Therefore, he gives everyone full independence, whatever one likes. But his ultimate instruction we find in the Bhagavad Gita: one should give up all other engagements and fully surrender unto him. That will make a man happy. Now, here in the last verse, Krishna mentioned Kamesya bhajante annadevata, that one whose intelligence is stolen by lust, such a person worships other demigods, right? And the next verse almost seems like contradictory, where Krishna is saying that, those who want to worship, other demigods, I as Super Soul, Paramatma within their heart, make their faith steady so that they can be dedicated to such deity, right? So somebody will be, praying to Ganesh, somebody will be praying to Durga Devi, somebody will be praying to Saraswati, etc. And Krishna is saying that he knows what you're looking for, and he understands that your faith is towards a demigod, and he allows that faith to become strong. There's a lot of times when we talk about God and demigod, the distinction, a lot of times we get criticized. Although it's the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that 3 times, the difference between demigods and gods, demigod and himself. Still, coming from the Hindu background, where people think, it's all one, and all kinds of ideas that are not in the Bhagavad Gita, by the way. So people get this agitated that, oh, I believe in Ganesha. How can you say Ganesha is not God? Krishna is God, right? Or I believe in whatever, right? So why is that? Because Krishna has instilled that faith in Ganesha or whoever, Indra or Saraswati or Durga or Kali or whoever, right? And accordingly, one feels that devotion, one does great austerity, tapasya, and tries to fulfill one's material desires. That's the idea. Why does Krishna do that? As Srila Prabhupada is stating in the purport, that Krishna gives independence to everyone. It's not, he doesn't want us to be automatons, which means machines, right? Where we reach out to Krishna out of programmed, without any choice. He's giving us choices, and he's allowing us to choose him or any other options that might be out there. 33 crore demigods, or one might believe in their parents. Other people have faith in ghosts, like tantrics and aghori sadhus and all, right? Some people have belief in some the Sai Baba or some Baba, this Baba, that Baba. So people have faith in various places where they find fulfillment. And Krishna does not force anyone to not do that. Rather, he gives them all the options. One time somebody asked, like, if onion garlic is not good for sattvic mindset, then why did Krishna even make these plants? And the answer is because he likes to give us options. He likes to, variety is the mother of enjoyment. So he's given us variety so we can enjoy, because we have come to this material world to enjoy without Krishna. And with variety, one can enjoy various modes of nature. But one who is a student of Bhagavad Gita, one is a student of Vedic system, knows that there's certain foods that are in the sattvic mode that Krishna will describe later chapters. And based on that, we eat sattvic food. All right. Any questions? If not, somebody wants to read the next verse. Text 22.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Yes. Text 22. Sa taya shraddhaya yuktas tasya radhanam ihate labhate cha tata kaman mayaiva vihitan hitan. Endowed with such a faith, he endeavors to worship a particular demigod and obtains his desires, but in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone.
Next verse.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Yes. Text 23. Antavat tu phalam tesam tad bhavati alpa medhasam devan deva yajo yanti mad bhakta yanti mam api. Men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu.
So very clear. There is no questioning here when people say, why does ISKCON people say about demigods? It's not ISKCON people, is Lord Krishna himself speaking in Bhagavad Gita, that he is God. And those who are alpa medhasa or less intelligent, they worship demigods, devata, right? So twice you can see Krishna has mentioned this. So Ashna Mataji is asking, Prabhuji, how do the man gods that have recently become famous, how are they so empowered that so many people are following them? And they say that they have also received many things by going to these babas and gurus. They are not even demigods, but people only. Yeah. So you have to understand that people have faith in various things. And according to their faith, Krishna finds them that resource. Insincere people who are just looking for, my daughter needs to get married, or I need that money, or I need that job, the kind of people, for them, there's demigods. Then there are people who are like, who believe in Amitabh Bachchan as a god, or Rajnikant as a god. There are temples of Rajnikant, by the way, and Amitabh Bachchan, I've heard. And there are then these babas and gurus and all that. So it's not they're empowered. They're just very prolific speakers who are charismatic. And just like Amitabh Bachchan is a very prolific actor and people follow him like God. And there are others who talk about, spirituality in a very nice marketable language that, is entertaining, and people follow them because it makes them feel good. It's spiritual entertainment. It's not that these people are particularly empowered. Yes, they have certain karma, of course, from their past life that allows them to have such following, become such influential people that they can even tell politicians what to do, and whatnot. So that's their karma. But in the scriptures, it is described that, especially Ishopanishad, where it is described that such people, in Bhagavad Gita, they call them dharmadhvaji, those who bear the flag of religion. So people are seeking bhakti, they're seeking God. Such people are diverted. And in Ishopanishad, it is said that such people who divert these people into the wrong direction, rather than giving them pure spirituality, those people and their followers all go to the darkest region of hell, called Andhatamas. Andha means dark, tamas means dark. So that's what they're headed for. So by karma, they are popular, they are good spoken, they're entertaining, they have following, they have money. None of the gurus in India have anything less than 1,000 crores in net worth. And that's wonderful. That's they have their karma. But neither they're going anywhere good after this, and neither are their follower. And those who think that things are happening when I go to this Baba, what's really happening is it's kind of like, when they do a medicine test, they have two groups, one where they give the real medicine, and the other group that they give sugar balls, right? And there's a lot of things that are mental. Mentally, somebody says, "Beta, sab theek ho jayega," and suddenly things start becoming right because somebody said, and you're feeling good and whatnot. And of course, and after that, you see again there is a problem that's coming back. So it's temporary relief. Even if whatever happens, it's temporary relief, and so they keep going back, and it's recurring revenue for the Babas, right? As long as their problems are not fully solved, Krishna uproots the problems, right? Uproots them, so they're never there, because the tendency which brings about that problem, that tendency is uprooted. But in these cases, Babas and whatever gurus, it's temporary relief. You feel good, you cry and you whatnot, and then again these things are back, and you go and give donation, do puja, and they keep getting rich and you keep getting poorer. That's the idea. It's not a permanent thing. But coming back to the Bhagavad Gita verse that Krishna first is saying, the kamasya jnana, those whose intelligence is influenced by lust, such people go to demigods. Then he says that if those people have that desire and they want to worship demigods, I give them full faith in them. And then he says that although they're worshiping the demigods, it is I only who's providing all the things, because demigods have no power by themselves. It is directly you get from Krishna as devotee, or indirectly you get from Krishna through the demigods, but Krishna is only given, because he says in chapter 5 also, right, that he is the Lord of all the planets. So Krishna is the one giving us. So if you go through demigod or directly, better to go directly. And that's why Krishna, next verse, he's saying that those who are less intelligent, they go through via media. Right? Men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. So whatever you get from the demigod or the so-called Baba or whatever else, the fruits are temporary and limited. What you get from Krishna is permanent, and it's ever growing, it's unlimited. Right? That's the difference between material and spiritual. Material is Sat Chit Ananda, eternal, conscious, and it's happiness. Right? And temporary, and the other part is Asat Achit Nirananda, temporary, dull, and full of misery. So material solutions are temporary and limited. Spiritual solutions might take a little longer, but they're permanent and they're unlimited. So far clear? Any further questions? Okay, moving on. Purport. Some of the commentators on Bhagavad Gita say that one who worships a demigod can reach the Supreme Lord. But here it is clearly stated that worshippers of demigods go to different planetary systems where various demigods are situated, like Swargaloka. Just as a worshipper of the sun achieves the sun, or a worshipper of the demigod of the moon achieves the moon. Similarly, if anyone wants to worship a demigod like Indra, he can attain the particular god's planet. It is not that everyone, regardless of whatever demigod is worshipped, will reach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is very important to understand, because there is a very popular organization called Ramakrishna Mission that propagates the whole idea of Yatomat Tatopat, or in Bengali, Jotomat Tatopat. That means as many paths, that many ways to the same God. So somebody is tying some bomb to their chest and hoping that they'll go to heaven, and somebody is chanting Hare Krishna and fasting on festival days, and feeding the poor and hungry, and that person will also go to the same place. That doesn't sound fair, and that's not how it is. According to the Bhagavad Gita, that is absolutely not how it is. So Krishna is saying that those who worship those demigods, they go where they are. Those who worship me, come to me. Right? Later also Krishna says again that whatever you worship, that's where you go. So again, this is a common concept that, all religions lead to the same God, all paths lead to the same God, all we're worshiping Kali, Krishna, this, that, is all the same thing. It's all one. No, it's not. Krishna makes a very clear distinction in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, as we can all see, right? Text number 23. So remember this when you get into a debate. I hope you don't, but if you do get into a debate where people bring up this topic, you can just quote Krishna. It's like, hey, you know what? It's as simple as Hindi, the Sanskrit that Krishna speaks. Antavat. Antavat means perishable, a thing that has an anta, that has an ending. Phalam, fruit. So fruits given by demigods have an ending, beginning and an end. Fruits given by Krishna doesn't have that. He says Alpa Medhasa. Medha means intelligence. Alpa Medhasa means less intelligence. Devan or demigods, right? Worshipper of demigods, Deva Yagya. Go, Yanti, go. Where? Where they are. And my devotee, Bhakta, devotees, Yanti Mam, comes to me, right? So very distinct. Where is Krishna? Krishna is not in the heavenly planets. Krishna is not on sun planet. Krishna is not on moon planet. Krishna is in Goloka Vrindavan, in the spiritual world. And that's where Krishna is saying, my devotees come to me. And worshipper of demigods go to where they are, like sun planet, moon planet, whatever, different places, different people. Okay, clear so far? Any challenges, any questions? If you question Krishna, I can't help you, but okay. All right, moving on. Not only are the demigods part of the Supreme Lord, but ordinary living entities are also. So there is not much difference between demigods and us, except just like there's not much difference between, let's say, a Bill Gates and us, in the sense that Bill Gates used his choices, his life in certain way. He's very, very successful, but he's still a human. You know, he's born, he dies, he has diseases and all that. Similarly, demigods are a whole different level of achiever who have done universal level achievements, right? And they have gotten those great positions, but they're not very different from us. They're also parts and parcel of Krishna, and they also die just like we do. They also fall in love. They don't have the bad karma. They have cursing and counter cursing in the heavenly kingdom, right? Here we have karma, bad karma, good karma. There they have cursing and counter cursing. That's the difference. But otherwise, pretty much it's a jiva. They're living entities like us, who, you know, one of you could be potentially a demigod, probably not, because you're all going back to God at Krishna willing. But it's possible if one so desires. So it is stated that the Brahmanas are the head of the Supreme Lord, the Kshatriyas are the arms, the Vaishyas are his waist, the Shudras are his legs, and all serve different functions. So this is again not a casteist statement. What it basically means is just like the body has different parts that are working in coordination to make sure one sustains, one grows, one stays healthy. The food goes in the mouth, then it goes in the belly processes that, and it sends the nourishment throughout the body. The hand is used to grab the food, right? The legs are used to move around, etc. They're all moving. So like that, in the Vedic society, the head is considered, the society's head is the Brahmanas, because what does the head do? Head looks forward, it's a visionary. Head makes decisions. Head can see, right? So that's the Brahmana's job, is to see the future, you know, with the right knowledge, make the right decision where the society follows them, right? And then comes the Kshatriyas, you know, who work with their hands and protection and whatnot. Then the Vaishyas, the belly, and the legs are the Shudras. So like that, the society is built. If everybody does what they're supposed to do, then society has a harmony. If everybody don't do what they're supposed to do, then there will be problem. So that's why communist system has never worked, because communism is all about equality, and equality doesn't work because people are not born equal. Somebody has more intelligence, somebody has less intelligence. Somebody has more strength, somebody has less strength. Somebody is hardworking, somebody is lazy. So if you want everybody to be equal, you cannot do it, because every human being has lust, greed, envy, pride, illusion, right? So even if you want equality, everybody gets the same pay, it won't work, because somebody will get envious. I'm working hard, I'm getting the same amount as that guy, then I'll not work hard, I'll get lazy, right? So that doesn't work. Communist system doesn't work as a result, because everybody has their role to play. Everybody's different. It's not superior, inferior. right? But it's everybody has a different role to play. A man has a different role to play, a woman has a different role to play. The head has a different role to play, the hands have a different role to play. And when everybody does their part, we are healthy. If the hand decides, no, I'm going to consume all the food, it's not going in the mouth, or the mouth decides it's not going in the belly, right? Then we'll starve to death. So that's the understanding here. So demigods have their place in the universal system. God has his place. Demigod is the one who's maintaining and sustaining and making sure, overseeing different departments of the universe. That's their job. Whether you worship them or not, they are supposed to do that. That's the job description they have from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So just like Indra, I was sharing the story with you, right? Krishna lifting Govardhan Hill with his left hand pinky. So Indra was sending all this rain because he was upset that you didn't worship me. But the idea is, Indra, you're supposed to send rain anyway, whether somebody worships you or not, because that's your job, right? It's not like you cannot be favorite this and favorite that. You have to be, if it's in their karma to get rain, you're supposed to do it, whether they worship you or not. So that was Krishna kind of reminding Indra that, hey, I'm God. You don't get to pick sides. You are going to do what you're supposed to do, right? So a couple of questions, let me see. Shaikat, Jatama Tatapat, about don't speak about destination. They have very little knowledge about, I have very little knowledge about Ramakrishna Mission. Maybe different spiritual experience, I don't know. So Shaikat, I grew up in Ramakrishna Mission because my uncle is a sannyasi who was in charge of Vivekananda's house and brought Abdul Kalam and all. And my cousin brother is a sannyasi also, who left home at the age of 26 and joined Mankun, and I've grown up in that culture. So actually accepting Bhagavad Gita was very difficult for me because I was ingrained, these ideas were ingrained. So when I speak about Ramakrishna Mission, I'm actually speaking from personal experience. I've read the books and the teachings of Ramakrishna as well as Vivekananda. And one of the prime ideas is, I mean, it's a popular idea because you're talking about secularism. All religions are same, all paths lead to the same God. Yato mat tato pot, right? Path, same thing, right? So many paths to where? Path to God. Saying you reach the same God, whether you worship Kali or Krishna, whether you worship through this method or that method. So that's the idea. And that's not what the Bhagavad Gita says. So again, nothing against any organization. I still have very good relationships with people from other organizations who believe different things, but that's not what the Bhagavad Gita says. And my job here is to make sure I only speak what's in the Bhagavad Gita, whether it's palatable or not. So don't blame me for it. It's Krishna's words, and that I'm just repeating like a parrot. What is the final destination, spiritual experience of so many paths that is not disclosed? Because every destination is different, right? For example, the certain religions think that if you kill kafirs, right, you get 72 virgins when you go up there, and that's their thought process, and that's their way of going. Christianity believes in the whole idea of you're buried, and then you wake up at the day of judgment, and God decides based on what you've done, left or right. You go to hell or heaven. So people have different ideas. I'm not getting to go talk about others, but I will focus on the Vedic system, right? In the Vedic system, there are different schools of thought, but given one thing is clear, that Bhagavad Gita is the prime book for us in the Vedic system. That book, Gita Upanishad, which is part of the Upanishad, God is personally speaking, and he's saying this, right? So I don't know how much more I can explain further than this. Prabhu, demigods are also same problem like us. The Mayas, 5 Mayas, GAPLLE. What is Gaple? I don't know what that is. 5 Mayas. I would be aware of what Maya. That's very difficult. Anyway, but yeah, demigods also have that issue, right? Just like we sing Damodar Ashtakam. There we mentioned of Nala, Kuvera, and Manigriva, right? They are the sons of Kubera, and they were lusty, and to the point they were intoxicated, and that Narad Muni was standing right there, and they were naked, and Narad Muni cursed them to become trees. So yeah, they have Menaka, Urvashi, all these beautiful girls who don't have husbands, by the way. They're called society girls by Prabhupada. What are they there for? So heaven is about enjoyment. They're very good looking. The women and the men, they're very, very good looking people. The Gandharvas, they're supposed to be extremely good looking, great singers. So it's all about enjoyment on a material sphere, on a high level. Here we think having a private jet or a yacht is enjoyment. And when you go to demigods, that's enjoyment is on a whole different level. But the thing is, like Krishna says in this verse, that it is limited and it is temporary. Limited and temporary. All right. Oh, a lot of things. Greed and pride. Oh, okay. How nice. You've made an acronym. Okay, cool. All right. Okay. Any questions? No questions? Then we'll move on. Chapter 7, text 24. Krishna now. Okay, somebody wants to read?
Abhyankantam vyaktim dapanen manyate mam abudhya param bhavam ajanteo mama vayam anuttamam. Unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme.
Thank you, Lakshmi Mataji. So, chapter 7 is turning out to be quite controversial, isn't it? Krishna is throwing one bouncer after another. Now he's saying, Avajananti ma mudha manusham tanamasrita, right? Sorry, this is not that verse. Avyaktam, vyaktim, apannam. So one who thinks, so this is about impersonalism, right? Again, it's not like, again, many people think, oh, ISKCON is against impersonalism and whatnot. It's not ISKCON, as Krishna. He's very clearly stating here that those who think, so there's a school of thought, the impersonalist or Brahmavadi school of thought, which states that God is actually Nirakar, or he has formless, he's an energy. And he takes form when he comes as avatar, and again, he becomes Nirakar energy. And then we also become that Nirakar energy and whatnot, whatnot. So Krishna is saying, absolutely not. Those who are less intelligent, such people think like that. Unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I am, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed a personality. Krishna was never impersonal. Krishna is always a person, right? He's not this energy turning into a form and then again becoming energy. No, Krishna always existed as a personality. God has a personality. God has likes and dislikes. Krishna likes cows. Krishna is a lover of the gopis and Srimati Radharani. Krishna lives in Goloka Vrindavan, the planet named after cows. Krishna, loves all beings. He's a loving personality. He has a personality, and he doesn't tolerate pride. He doesn't tolerate envy. He doesn't like certain things, right? So Krishna is very clearly giving these things, that I have always had a personality and I always will be this person that I am. And that's why it is so relishable to have a relationship with Krishna, because he has a personality. I should say, just like us, we have a personality because Krishna has a personality, right? So just like we connect with other human beings and everybody has a different personality, and that's what makes them unique. So similarly, it's all coming from the original father who has a personality, and that's what makes him unique. And he has unique qualities, unlimited qualities, but very unique qualities. And we have also unique qualities, right? And it is said every living entity has one unique quality that Krishna finds very attractive. So no matter who, it's a bacteria in the belly or an ant or a prime minister, doesn't matter. Krishna is having special relationship with each and every soul of this entire creation. And he is a person. Many people have issues with that statement because people like to think, oh, I am a person, but God should be just energy. He shouldn't talk. He shouldn't reciprocate. I can do whatever nonsense I want, and God should just be there standing with his hand like this and give me blessings, and that's about it. No, that's not how Krishna works. He's not just there, like a dumb statue. He is a person, and if you are, invest in your relationship with Krishna, you will see the reciprocation, as I know many of you already have experienced that. So unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, was impersonal before and now have assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. So Krishna doesn't die. Krishna is never born. That's why we say appearance day. Janmashtami is Krishna's appearance day, right? And Krishna's disappearance is, we don't talk about the disappearance day of the Supreme Lord, but it is somewhere around February, where Krishna left the planet and he went back again to Godhead, and Kali Yuga started from that very day. So devotees like Sadaputa Prabhu have calculated that going 5,125 something years, around February, I think 14th or 20th, something like that. Right? But the point is very accurate. So Krishna left the planet, and that place is also there near Somnath, right? Where Krishna left, he was dangling his feet, and that the story of that bard, the hunter who hit Krishna's feet. But that was also for the atheistic people to show them, oh, look, I'm just a human, I die. So like Krishna says in the previous verse, right? Wherever you put your faith, I strengthen that. If you put your faith in demigods, I strengthen that. If you put your faith in atheism, I strengthen that. If you put your faith in me being a human, I strengthen that. So whatever faith, wherever you're putting your faith, because without faith, a human being cannot live, right? If every time you got on a flight or a train and you have to ask the driver for their certificate, hey, have you flown a flight before? We take it for granted that, oh, it's Air India or it's Indigo. They must have the good pilot who knows how to fly and how to land. We don't ask. So we work on faith every moment. So Krishna's thing is that so we can be comfortable wherever we put our faith, he strengthens that faith, whether it's demigods, whether it's some Baba, whether it's wherever, right? So we can live confidently based on our understanding. That might be illusion, but we have confidence in whatever illusion we believe in. And there's also the Bhagavad Gita. For one who is asking the questions, Krishna is saying, Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam. I give you the intelligence by which you can come back to me. I give you the knowledge by which you can come back to me. I give you the devotees who can bring you back to me. Right? So Krishna's allowing us to come back to him through these methods. So he has given us choices. For one who is asking questions, why is there suffering? Why so many gods? Why is there injustice, etc.? Krishna is like, oh, good. Now you're acting like a human being. You're asking questions, I'll give you the answers. Right? And accordingly, we get our answers. So we are fortunate that we have those answers. And we should make others also fortunate when we have time to, if somebody comes and asks questions, at least we can answer it for them. Because most people don't open the Bhagavad Gita. So here, my dear Lord, devotees like Vyasadeva and Narada now know you to be the personality of Godhead. By understanding different Vedic literatures, one can come to know your characteristics, your form, and your activities. And one can thus understand that you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance, the demons, the non-devotees, cannot understand you. They are unable to understand you. However, expert such non-devotees may be in discussing Vedanta and the Upanishads and the Vedic literatures, it is not possible for them to understand the personality of Godhead. Stotra Ratna 12. So basically what is being spoken here is that great personalities like Vyasadeva, Narada, who are seers of the truth, who are the embodiments of Vedic knowledge, they know the Lord. And those of us who study the Vedic knowledge, we know it. Whether you read the Padma Puran, whether you read Shiv Puran, whether you read Vishnu Puran, whether you read the Upanishads, everywhere it's very, very crystal clear who is God, right? Whether it's Lord Brahma, whether it's Lord Shiva, whether it's Narada, whether it's Brihaspati, whether it's Indra, everybody is clear in their conception. Who are confused? Only us. Why are we confused? Because we get a knowledge from TV. Whoever says whatever they say, and that's what we kind of get our knowledge, and that's where problems happen. But a Shiva devotee might fight with a Vaishnava, or a Ganesh devotee might fight with a Kali devotee, or whatever, right? Or a Hindu might fight with a Muslim. One is saying Allah, one is saying Krishna. But There, up there, there is no confusion because it's very clear who's what. But due to lack of knowledge, there is confusion. And sometimes what happens when you study the scriptures, even the Bhagavad Gita, many of you will come to the conclusion that this is a very contradictory book. Krishna says one thing in first verse, next verse he's saying something else. He's saying you're unintelligent if you're worshiping demigods. Next verse he's saying I'll give you the faith when you worship demigods. So there also, rather than blaming Krishna for contradictory statement, we should try to understand that maybe my knowledge is limited, as a result of which I don't have clarity. Let me read it fully, or let me get Vaishnava guidance, and thereby it will become clear that where is the so-called doubt or so-called contradiction will get cleared up. Right. Make sense? Any questions? Okay. Therefore, the monastic contention that ultimate truth is formless and the form is imposed down not hold true. It is clearly stated here that it is not imposed from the Bhagavad Gita. We can clearly understand that the forms of the demigods and the forms of the Supreme Lord are simultaneously existing, and that Lord Krishna is Satchidananda, eternal, blissful knowledge. The Vedic literature confirms that the supreme absolute truth is knowledge and blissful pleasure. Vijnanam Anandam Brahma, Brihat Aranyaka Upanishad. And that he is the reservoir of unlimited auspicious qualities. Only when you have personality, you have qualities, right? So quality is not possible. Light bulb, there's no quality except it's effulgent. But Krishna has many qualities. Lord Shiva has many qualities. The demigods have many qualities, like Ganesha, Vignahanta, right? Surya Narayan, he has health. He can give us good health. That's why people do Surya Pranam. So he has certain qualities. So different personalities have different qualities. We cannot understand how the Supreme Person of Godhead can be impersonal. The imposition theory of the impersonalist monist is false as far as the statements of the Gita are concerned. It is clear herein that the supreme absolute truth, Lord Krishna, has both form and personality. Come on, some questions. Somebody challenge me. You're being kind to me because I have fever? This is what sustains me. When you allow me to speak about Krishna, that's what sustains my life. So please ask some nice questions if you have. If not, we'll move on to the next verse. Somebody wants to read? Text 25.
Prabhuji, may I?
Please.
Text 25. Naham prakasha sarvasya yoga maya samarvita mudho yam nabhi janati loko mam ajam avyam. Translation: I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible.
Thank you, Prabhu. So again, those who are unintelligent, not in the sense they have low IQ. Unintelligent in the sense that people who are spiritually unintelligent. Spiritually, they're not well-versed, not even interested in spirituality. To such people, Krishna's, I don't reveal myself to them. They might have a PhD on scriptures, but still they won't have any access to knowing the personality of Godhead. Whereas a very simple person can have very, very deep aspect, understanding, realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So material education or material intelligence is not a qualification for understanding or learning about Krishna. Access to Krishna is through bhakti or spiritual intelligence. It's called Buddhi Yoga. We have heard this word Buddhi Yoga before, right? So that's same as bhakti. So through intelligence, we pursue this knowledge and under guidance with submission, and thereby we understand Krishna reveals in our hearts nuggets of wisdom about himself. Now, this is a very important thing to understand, realizations, nuggets of wisdom. So Krishna is unknowable through all the intelligence and knowledge that we have. Krishna is unknowable, but he becomes knowable when one is sincere and one is humble and one submissively pursues under the bona fide guidance of a spiritual master. Krishna reveals, he gives us realizations. Those are gifts from Krishna. So I'll pause here rather than going on with all the verses. I want to pause and see if any of you, as you're chanting Hare Krishna, as you're learning the Bhagavad Gita, as you're applying those principles in your life, if you are getting any realizations, if you could share with all of us, that would be wonderful. And what realization means is that aha moment, like, oh, wow, this is how it works. Oh, that's what Krishna meant. Oh, now I get it, right? Anything anybody wants to share? Pitan, if we develop any one quality of Krishna, can we get Krishna's attention? Well, depends how you develop. Right? To develop Krishna-like quality, you need to associate with devotees. When you associate with devotees, yes, you get Krishna's attention. Okay. Krishna, you want to start? Share some realization that Krishna has given you lately.
Prabhuji, as you asked, like I'm totally blank now. What should I say? But Prabhuji, there are certain realizations which I get, like when I hear the Philosophy Friday, and after that there are certain doubts which keep revolving. And after that, just now I was going to ask you that why is Krishna contradicting his statements every now and then? And just now you spoke that why he is doing that. Just after that, I was trying to say that like why he is doing all these things, why he is contradicting, and just you answered that maybe my intelligence is low. So this is how things go, and I get few answers while maybe I'm chanting or maybe I'm doing something or hearing your lectures. Then I get those realizations, and those are really very, very so powerful. And
Thank you so much. Lakshmi Mata, you just came back from Vrindavan. Please tell us some of your realizations.
Actually, there it was like this time I just can't express, Prabhuji. It was just a very blissful experience. I have been there, as I already mentioned in group, many a times. But this time I really found, yes, Krishna exists there. Earlier I used to, when I used to go Mathura, I was like, okay, this is the Janam Bhumi. And then I used to go to Nidhivan. So I used to see trees, and then I used to tell, in the night they become Krishna and Radha, in the daytime they become trees, and all those kind of stories. And then mostly it was always a kind of like we are going for a ride or something like that. This time it was entirely different. That's why I told you that I went there for a second day, and then I stretched my stay for a week. And even this time it said, if it would not have been the question of my survival and sustenance, I would not have come back from there. So somehow I'm just telling Prabhuji ki in 2-3 years I shall do all my duties, and then I shall permanently I shall reside in Vrindavan, living in ashrams, doing bhaktis and all those things, and never to be back here in Delhi, Noida, and all those things.
Yeah, you can move your restaurant from Noida to Vrindavan.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, Prabhuji.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Mataji.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Prayash, you want to share something? Some realization?
Actually, outside. I'm in a car right now, so maybe next Friday.
Sure. All right. Okay. All right. Vibhuti Mataji, want to share something? You're muted. I cannot hear you.
Give me a minute. Yeah. So can you hear me now?
Yeah, clearly.
So I, before Philosophy Friday, I used to, from the time I was a kid, I used to pray to God, because we used to pray to God. Like And I was one of them who used to pray to Durga Mata and used to, I'm sorry to say, mock Krishna and Rama. In many of the classes you have told, there are people. So I was one of them. कि ये तो ऐसे थे, ये तो चोर थे, whatever. Like you understand that. So after these classes, what I feel is that whenever I pray to God, I'm talking to God, and I feel that there is a God. And prior to this, we used to pray to God, but it was just because we have been taught by our parents to pray to God. So because we have to go to temple. And once I have been in my life to Vrindavan in 2017, and that too I was forced by my husband's friend. We have to go. So I just went in a way that I have to eat good things, and I was just looking at people so mad in one of the temple. I don't even know. I think Banke Bihari or that. So my mental state was not. I was just looking. पागल है लोग क्या ऐसा भी क्या है? So now I'm just telling my husband that I have to go. So maybe in December or anytime we can go on any Saturday, Sunday. So we've been traveling from last 15 days to different locations. So but I'll definitely go with a different vision in my mind that now I can feel what the Mataji was saying. So I can correlate to that. So this is one of the things I wanted to share. And regarding the questions which come to our mind, I also feel so many times during the class also, or otherwise during the day also, कि there are different faiths. Like there are people, Sikh people who have faith in their guru. So whatever the guru says, that is right. But guru again was a man, and every preachings are good, but the to wo aadmi. Similarly, Sri Prabhupada was also a man. So how can we know that he knows everything and whatever he says is right? But then I again convince myself, because whatever is written in Gita, he is preaching that only. Then
Yes.
there are people who there is another Gita, I think Gita Press ki Gita hai shayad. I don't know, because I've never before this I have not taken any interest. So I think that is something different. I read somewhere on Instagram that there is a difference between the explanation of Gita also. So these types of questions do come, but then I do not ask in the class, because what matters is the content of Gita which has been explained, and that is giving so much change to my life and my perspective towards different things. So that is more important. Instead of getting those questions again and again to my mind, I just brush them off and do not ask.
No, you should ask. You should absolutely ask. And just to address those points, Srila Prabhupada never speaks anything that is an opinion. It is even the purports, if you see, they're quotes from different scriptures. He's pulling in scriptures from Aranyaka Upanishad or Mundaka Upanishad or this Purana, that Purana, or Brahma Samhita. Every line is actually from a scripture. And those who have read these can actually appreciate that Srila Prabhupada doesn't go even one word deviating from what is given in the scriptures. And he always said, I'm a fifth class man. You guys are first class men and women, and I'm a fifth class man. I have nothing. The only thing I have is I'm repeating what my guru said and whose guru said and his guru said, and they're repeating what is there in the scriptures. And that's about it. And that's the purity of the person. See, I am a very impure person. I'm dealing with all kinds of things in life, but the only purity is I do not manufacture any philosophy. I just speak what is in the Gita. And as long as all of us can do that, this disciplic succession will continue. Right? Because, and as soon as we start doing things our way, like, oh, I want some more following, maybe I'll not say this, maybe I'll move it around and give it a spin and sugarcoat this, that's when things get diluted. And when you're diluting it, then the real mercy doesn't go through. You might get following, you might get popularity, but Krishna transforming the heart, that magic that happened, like you said, I can perceive Krishna. I feel the same thing. I can perceive Krishna, seeing the lordships in the temple, the deities. Like you can say my mother or my father might be fake, but I might not be able to perceive a human being, but Krishna, I can definitely perceive. Is that strong a perception? And that's only because the purity of the disciplic succession has given us access to that. But it is not anybody's own opinion. It is only Krishna's opinion. Now, Gita Press versus Bhagavad Gita as it is. So Gita Press is translated by Sanskrit scholars, right? So when Sanskrit scholars do, like Google Translate, right? When you do Google Translate from Hindi to English or Bengali to English, what happens? Some of the things get lost, right?
Mhm.
The context sometimes gets lost. But when a bhakta translates, right, with the understanding of deep understanding of other scriptures and the context and everything else that is there, then there is a far more in-depth understanding. These same verses that we just read, that people who are less intelligent worship demigods, people whose intelligence taken by lust worship demigods, you will see a Mayavadi use the same words and say, oh, Krishna is supporting Durga Puja and this and that. But anybody who can, you don't have to be a Sanskrit scholar, just read the word Alpamedha, read the word Kamastesya Ritagyana, right? These are words that we use in Hindi, and Krishna is very clear. And Srila Prabhupada's, Bhagavad Gita, he took him a long time because he does word for word translation. Even Sandhi Vichhed, which means he breaks down words,
Mhm.
right, and gives translations of each one of them. It's not easy to translate Sanskrit to English, because Sanskrit is a much richer language than English. There are no words in certain cases in English, like bhakti. Devotion people loosely use. Prabhupada says pure devotional service, because there is no one word for bhakti in English. So Prabhupada, like Bhagavan, he translated supreme personality of Godhead. The word personality added because Bhagavan means one who has a personality. Now God, the English word, doesn't have that kind of in-depth understanding. So Srila Prabhupada has given us something very, very rich and deep. If you see the Bhagavad Gita as it is fat. It has a lot of text, lot of purport, lot of explanation. But if you see the translation, there is not much difference. Gita Press or Bhagavad Gita, the translations are pretty much more or less the same. But the purports, the way people see it, one is scholarly look, the other one is bhakti look. And even when we are going through Gyan Kand, we are going through Ashtanga Kand, Prabhupada keeps reminding us, bhakti is the highest, bhakti is the highest, bhakti, don't forget bhakti, don't get deviated. Bhakti is the highest. And really at the end of every chapter, we come to the conclusion, oh yes, Krishna says, all of these, but bhakti is the best. Worship me and you're taken care of. Right? So
Two
that's the
questions.
understanding. Yeah, please.
One question is that we should take this as the verses in Gita Press Gita and the Gita as it is by Srila Prabhupada, the verses are same. One question, are they same? Second question is, so should we consider the Sanskrit scholars are less intelligent, or whatever the conversion they have done of the verses is less meaningful or less intelligent as compared to Srila Prabhupada?
Like I said, Krishna cannot be known through scholarship. Krishna cannot be known through material intelligence. Krishna can be only known through bhakti. So I'm not saying they're less intelligent. I'm saying it's less deep.
Okay.
HD TV versus normal TV. HD TV, when the smallest things become very clear, right? And normal TV, it's a little hazy. So similarly, HD channels have more clarity. So Prabhupada's purports have more clarity, more in-depth understanding. The Sanskrit scholars are not stupid, but they are only giving what's the translation. They're at the Google Translate. Prabhupada is giving the translation plus the context of where this is being spoken from. Why Krishna is sometimes calling Arjuna Dhananjay. In another verse, he calls him Gudakesha. In another verse, he calls him Arjuna. What? Because they're best friends, Krishna and Arjuna. Sometimes when you talk to your best friend, you say certain nicknames to them based on the joke or the insider conversation. Now, we are outsiders. We don't know what the insider conversation is. Neither does the Sanskrit scholars. But a bhakta who has read other scriptures and who know what are the internal conversations is giving the context. Kaunteya, why is he saying Kaunteya? Because Arjuna is feeling dejected. Krishna is reminding him, you're Kunti's son. You're coming from, calling him Bharata. You're coming from the Maharaj Bharat's dynasty. You're a great person. How can you say you're going to leave the battlefield and run away? Right? So all these things you will not find in a Sanskrit scholar's translation. So one is flat, one is high definition. You're muted.
Sorry. One more question, can I ask?
Yeah, please.
Okay. I'll ask in Hindi to be more clear. सपोज गुरबानी है जैसे सिखों की, तो
Mhm.
गुरबानी वाले लोग ये सोचते हैं कि गुरबानी ही बेस्ट है और ये ही एक चीज है जिसको हमने फॉलो करना है।
Mhm.
इस्कॉन वाले सोचते हैं कि गीता है, इस तरह से सब लोग सोचते हैं। पर हमें कैसे पता चले कि ये वाला सही है और वो वाला सही नहीं है? बिकॉज
Correct.
हर किसी की अल्टीमेटली एट द एंड इट इज फेथ इन गॉड और फेथ इन सुप्रीम पावर।
नहीं, ये फेथ नहीं है, ये साइंस है। क्योंकि जब आप भगवत गीता पूरा एंड टू एंड पढ़ चुके होंगे, यू विल फाइंड आउट कि गुरबानी में जो लिखा हुआ है या बाइबल में जो लिखा हुआ है या कुरान में जो लिखा हुआ है, दैट इज आल्सो देयर इन द भगवत गीता, इन द वैदिक विजडम. Vedic wisdom is all inclusive and more. So Gurvani is going all the way to impersonalism and stopping there. So it's truth, but there is truth, there is more truth. Here, Krishna is saying impersonalism is a truth. There's Brahma Jyoti, my bodily effulgence. But then he's saying that, but that's not my origin. That is my effulgence. There is higher truth than that, and that is me, the personality of Godhead. So it is not about कि ISKCON वाले सोचते हैं ये truth है कि Christian वाले सोचते हैं ऐसे. That's, you have to try it out. So for me, I have always been a seeker of spirituality from the age of 5. So I grew up in a Christian missionary school where I used to study the scriptures. I used to worship Christ even on 25th December. I would do all ceremonies and everything. I went to US. In my engineering, I took Islamic thoughts for 2 semesters, end to end, from before Muhammad to Palestine and Israel. Entire Islamic history and the knowledge of their scriptures, the hadith and everything else, right? And I was able to appreciate it on a whole different level, rather than finding the differences and saying, oh, you're this and we are better. Rather, I'm able to appreciate what Christ is saying, because from Bhagavad Gita knowledge, I understand what Christ is not saying or what he's indicating towards. For example, when Christ is sitting on a hill and he's asking his disciples, that blind child, whose fault is it? Is it his fault or his parents' fault? And some are saying it's his fault, some are saying it's a child, it cannot be his fault, it must be his parents' fault. Christ is referring to karma and reincarnation. Now, the Bible has been removed of all things related to karma and reincarnation by King Constantine, right? I appreciate Bible. I can appreciate Jesus from that perspective. Like, I know what he's referring to. I know where he's indicating this. So, and I appreciate Bhagavad Gita even more because it's so complete that is allowing me to appreciate other knowledge, other bodies of knowledge, which might be a little less complete. Why are they a little less complete? Not because Jesus was less. Because at the time, at the people they were preaching to were, Muhammad was talking to people who are, what do you call them? Bedouins? Like they're, I don't know exact word, is not coming to me. Basically, desert dwellers. Jesus was talking to people who are also coming from very, very low backgrounds, eating each other's liver. Huh? So they're coming from such backgrounds that even if they have spoken Vedic wisdom to them, not possible that they'll understand. Muhammad said, marry 4 wives. At that time, they were marrying anyone. They were even marrying their own mothers and having children with their own mother. Right? So that's how degraded society was. And Muhammad came and said, oh, you're only allowed 4 wives. Now today we're like, 4 wives, my God. But that's their situation. That's the audience they're speaking to. So that's why, but Vedic wisdom was spoken to the highest, most advanced civilization, the Aryans. So we had science, we have technology, we had everything, right? So historically speaking, we had the most advanced civilization, and nobody doubts that. Even in the Guinness Book of World Records, Hinduism is the oldest religion, very clear. You go to any part of the world, whether it's Greece or Indonesia or anywhere, you will find Shivlingas, you will find Lord Vishnu's mention. Even in the Kaaba, there used to be a mention of the Vedic scriptures, right? So this was Bharatvarsha, the entire world, very advanced civilization. And there were the non-Aryas, they called the Anaryas, or what we Hindi mein hum bolte Anari. That's where it comes from, Anari. Matlab, he doesn't know anything. Arya means those who are knowledgeable in Vedic wisdom. So such people can take philosophy and go to the whole new level and go to deep wisdom. That's why what we have is complete truth. From which vantage point, when we learn it, we can appreciate others. This is what you mean. When you know algebra, when you know differential equation, you can appreciate algebra and other smaller aspects of mathematics. Right. That's what it is. Does it make sense, Vibhuti Mataji? Okay, cool. All right. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Hare Krishna, everyone. Have a good night.
Hare Krishna.